COVID-19 protests. Let's talk about it. I've been seeing a lot of posts about this lately, and I have to say, first off, I'm not surprised. The first thought that came to my mind when I saw the way the government was responding to this was we're going to have protests. And this is just the first wave, in my opinion. And I think they're not really protesting the right thing, honestly. It's funny. I feel like I'm very like, yes, the protests, but at the same time, I'm like, no, no, what are you guys doing? Why are you doing this type of protest? Um, so let me dive into that a little bit. And this time, I actually took notes because I want to make sure that I uh, hit some points because usually I just try and ramble, and that often does not go well. So let's dive in. I think the biggest problem that we're all facing right now is we're being given a false choice, and it's throwing people into some really weird behavior. Um, the false choice is this idea that we can either save all the people who are going to die from COVID by staying at home and destroying the economy, or we can keep the economy going and we can risk those lives, and maybe they die, maybe they don't, maybe it's not as bad, whatever, but we're willing to take the risk of all those people dying so that we can save the economy. That they're at this kind of, there's a fight between the two, that you can't do both at the same time. And that is mostly just because of an old idea of what the economy is. And if we try to just go back to normal, that creates this dichotomy. But there's a way forward rather than going backwards, and the forward helps everybody. So I would say if we transform our economy, if we upgrade it, if we evolve it, and build it into something we should have been building a long time ago, because if we had this more upgraded version that we were capable of building a while back, we would not be in any sort of trouble right now at all. It would be like, oh, everyone, you have to stay home. And we'd be like, okay, sweet, no problem, because everything would be figured out in a lot of different ways. So let me kind of lay that out a bit. So I've been advocating for UBI for a long time. And this is obviously the time to do it, if there was ever a time. And so if we had the government show up and take care of people, and not just give trillions of dollars to the richest parts of the economy, not just float the stock market and help the banks and help the corporations, but if they came out and just said, we're just going to put a bunch of resources into helping all the regular people, then we could have a scenario where there's no trouble with staying at home. And so right now, these people who are going out to protest, I get it, because you are facing economic crisis. That's what's been created here, because we're working in this old system that is not built to handle taking care of lots of people. It's built to be very cutthroat. And so now you've got these people protesting, saying we want to reopen the country, get back to work, because that's the only way they know how to have food and shelter and freedom from all the economic strife that is coming at them right now. But UBI. So I think here's the package. If we have UBI of $2,000 per month per adult, plus $500 per kid, then that's a substantial amount that helps a lot. And if you have to pay all your regular bills, it's not enough. But if we at the same time cancel rent and mortgage payments, now you're not worrying about having to pay for where you're living. So that makes your money go further. If we cancel student debt, so now you don't have to worry about those payments. If we give Medicare for all, so you're not worrying about paying insurance anymore. And we also, on top of that, do our best to make sure that unemployment insurance is there for people who lose a job. But we try to avoid that in the first place by having the payroll covered by the government, which is like other countries are doing this. It's obvious, it's easy. We're just ridiculous in this country. But by having the payroll covered, most companies cannot lay anyone off. And like we've kind of got a version of that here, but it's not as robust as it could be. And so, but if some people will lose jobs, there's unemployment insurance for that. But unemployment insurance doesn't really cover it. There's we're on a teetering economy where people were about to get pushed off the cliff when things were supposedly good, booming economy. Now all those people have just been knocked off the cliff, and they need like ropes thrown down to like pull them back up. And so unemployment insurance doesn't do that for enough, doesn't like cover enough things. There's a lot of people who get missed by that. A lot of Americans who are falling off the cliff who are not covered by maintaining the payroll or covering the unemployment. So that's why UBI is so good, because it ensures it's those people who were completely missed get something. Then if you have a payroll, if you have unemployment insurance, you get that on top of your UBI. So you've got a solid amount. We've got rid of the mortgage and the rent. We've gotten rid of the student debt payments, and your health insurance is covered. Suddenly, what is there to protest? You're protesting that you have to stay at home and, do a little bit of time for yourself, a little bit of me time, a little bit of self-care, a little bit of growth, a little bit of evolution for yourself, a little bit of spiritual awakening. All these things are now available to you. And I mean, as someone who's from a meditation yoga background, this is like what we like want to pay to go do. Or it's like, how do I get a chance to go to a retreat center and just stay there for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month? My brother did 4 years, right? So that we can be left alone and have our time to go into that spiritual experience and really go into our practice. So this like freak out about having to stay at home is funny to me in that regard. Now I get it from old version of me who might have wanted to go out more and be at parties and being social and feeling really messed up by that. But I don't fully get it, because I kind of went through that when I was on probation for 2 years it was 2 years. And then like jail before that and stuff. So you lose everything. All freedom's gone. You're in jail. It's like being an elementary student again, in a much worse environment in terms of hostility and people willing to do shitty stuff. But for like 2 years, I couldn't go out to the parties or anything like that, because if I was on daily drug test. So, any day I could go in and be pulled for a drug test, for 2 years. So I just had to not do anything that was risky, and I couldn't get into any more fights, and going out got me into fights, and I couldn't do so many of the things that were like part of my life, and I had to retreat into just staying at home. And so luckily the internet exists, and I had a robust group of friends that I got super active with and played StarCraft, and we set up a really like professional team and all that type of stuff. It was wonderful. And it was one of the best times of my life, actually. But, okay, so I'm not advocating that we should all just stay at home and play video games all the time. But I'm saying that this freak out about staying at home at a time when we have this type of technology now, it's a little bit excessive to me. I get it if you're feeling the economic crunch. That I can totally resonate. And I say that's why we do these policies. This is why we take these steps, and all of us benefit. Everyone's taken care of. The economy booms during this time, because if you get that package I just described, you probably will have a little extra money that you can be like, now I can pay off this credit card debt. Now I can, handle this other thing that I needed to pay. Now I can pay this person back. Whatever it is, and that is money that goes up, and it takes care of the rich people. Because right now their crisis is the fact that they have rents that they collect, but now they can't collect those rents because people are not able to pay them. In the thing I just described, we would have a fund, and what I'm describing actually, a lot of it is in a bill that was just introduced. And I'll link that below so you can take a look, but what they're proposing is we have a fund, so the government will take care of the rents. It's not like we're saying, oh, landlords, you don't get any money. It's us people staying in the house doesn't have to pay the rent. The government pays the rent. Those landlords and owners and everything are made whole. Mortgages are not paid also, so, same deal. Banks are made whole from that. And so it's like it creates a situation where all of the wealthy people are taken care of, but instead of just spending trillions of dollars to like directly just put it in their pocket, the money goes to the poorest people first, and then it goes up, and then the wealthy people don't have to be freaked out. And you have to recognize that part of the economic collapse that is still coming has to do with the fact that wealthy people are always betting on how the economy is going to go, and they set up these different stock things and derivatives, and just it's fancy language, but it's basically bets on whether they're going to collect these rents. And they'll say, oh, there's a really good chance that these rents are going to be collected, so they're like a high quality thing, so we can charge a certain amount for that, and people will buy that. But then when those rents suddenly are not being collected, it creates like the housing bubble crisis that happened in 2008. So we have a lot of potential for something like that to happen in many different avenues. Now, here's the other point: is that there's extreme rules and there's reasonable rules, and the uh, protests that I'm seeing in Michigan, especially, there's a certain amount of backlash to the extreme rules. Though I think most of it is economic, but I think we should address like extreme versus reasonable rules. Um, like I don't wear a mask everywhere I go all the time. I'm just not convinced by the science of it. At the same time, I think we should all be staying at home as much as possible. Um, I keep my distance from people, but I still talk to them and say hi and smile and things like that. You know, I when I like we go out to nature because if we're going to stay sane and healthy in these times, going out to nature is a good thing. And places where they're putting rules where you're not allowed to leave the house at all, like I think it's too extreme. I know in Spain it was like that for a bit, and now I get it if that can stay very temporary during like a really high point. So I get why Michigan has just gone really extreme on things because they were having just this crazy surge and a lot of people dying and a huge overwhelm in the hospitals. The same was in Spain why they went so extreme on it. Now Spain is releasing a little bit of that and so on. But we just have to recognize that if we put extreme rules too quickly and if we don't have enough science to back it up, then people don't follow it as much and it starts to create this backlash. So, you know, I think Colorado's done a very good job of having a balance where, you know, basically all the businesses are shut down, but like the non-essential businesses, some of them have like a very minimal way of doing it where like the car wash I see is open because they have a drive-through, but like where people park and or like where the people would come into your car and wipe it down, that doesn't happen anymore. You can just go through the drive-through. So it's like you know, if you're in your car, it's the same as being in your house. Like if you get in your house, you get in your garage, go in your car, and you drive your car, you've not made anyone in any danger. You know, you haven't spread it in any way. It's you know, so if and then if you get out in nature and there's not people around, and then you get back in your car, you drive back, you've done nothing to harm anyone. So it's like let's be honest about what we can still do because in a lot of ways this is like a prime scenario because the things that we can still do are like be in nature, are you know have you know talk with your neighbor over the fence and like wave to them and smile and chat a little bit. Like there's we don't have to be in a full like restriction of like social distance. Like it should be physical distancing, not social distancing. We should be socially super connecting right now and physically keeping some space because the physical interaction is what can spread it. Um, so yeah, that was one thing that I wanted to bring up. I think we also have to recognize the social distancing, the physical distancing is working. The curve is starting to flatten, things are slowing down, and that's exciting. But we have to recognize only a small percentage of the U.S. population has been exposed to this and gotten over it and built antibodies, and there's no vaccine. So that basically means like we're slowing it down, but it's going to keep spreading no matter what. Like even China, who did the most extreme measures, and they can because they're in this scenario where like literally the building is like controlled, like for the apartment building, the locks are like electronically controlled, and they just came in and just like boom, locks on, you can't leave your place. Like that's extreme. And so they did a lot of intense stuff like that, and they got it down to like zero. But then they've started to open it up again, and it's rising again. But not bad. But it's like now it's not zero. It's like 26 cases a day or 2 deaths a day type of thing. Like it's very very low, but it hasn't disappeared. Like this idea that it's really really hard to 100% disappear it unless you do those extreme measures for a long time. All right. So making this virus disappear is not part of the plan. The plan is recognizing that all of us, probably the whole planet, is going to get sick with this virus at some point in the next couple of years. And we need to try and spread it out because if all of us are sick of with it at the same time, then we don't just die from the virus, we die from the lack of access to the healthcare we need to address what the virus is doing to kill us. So, and it's not just us who dies now. It's not just the people infected. It's other people who are having a life-threatening situation, but they don't have access to care either because the hospitals are so overrun, right? So we have to take action and end the let's see, spread of it, but at a high pace, but not actually eliminate the virus. That's not like an option. That's not part of the ways that we can handle this, right? So with that in mind, we're gonna have to do a certain amount of these measures for a while. I think we will open them up, but we just got to recognize it's going to be like this for a while, and that's why they have to do this type of economic package with the UBI of 2,000 a month and so on, canceling rent and such, because otherwise the protests are going to get way worse than this. And I understand, like, I'm not surprised, and it's going to eventually be me out there protesting too, because I'll be screwed as well. And the stimulus check was helpful. It's not enough to get through the economic depression that's coming up, and it's a bit of a scary time in that sense. It's a hopeful time at the same time, because if we handle it right, it can be such a wonderful way for us to all grow and evolve and build the new system that's a better system for all of us. But it's a scary time, because if we handle it wrong, it can get very rough for people, which can create lots of violence and destruction type of behavior, energy, and then all of us suffer from that. So I'm hopeful, but worried, and just needed to rant about it and make some points. I think this is pretty much all the points I had. Double check. Yeah, and basically right here, if we did the right steps, we would be in a good scenario. Right now, the bottom third of Americans are facing a real dire thing, and then it'll turn to the bottom half if this doesn't get fixed in some way soon. And the fix is not go back to work as quick as we can. The fix is we have to change the way the economy works, and we need to make some shifts with things like UBI and so on. All right. I think this was a bit longer than I expected, but thank you if you stayed. Peace and love.